A nervous black intern helped a deaf visitor. Then she realized who was watching. She never thought a single gesture could change everything. In fact, she almost didn't do it at all. After all, she was just an intern, young, shy, invisible to most people in that towering glass office. Her job was simple: keep her head down, answer phones, and try not to get in the way. But sometimes, life doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes, it takes the quietest person in the room and puts them in the center of a storm. It was an ordinary morning when it happened. The lobby buzzed with footsteps, voices, and the scent of polished marble mixed with coffee. People passed through without a second glance, suits rushing to elevators, assistants balancing files, security nodding politely at familiar faces. But then, one guest walked in. He was different. Not because of his clothes. He wore the same red and white jacket as countless delivery workers before him, but because of his silence. He stood at the counter, hesitant, eyes searching for something. And when he opened his mouth, no words came out. Only a strained motion of the hands, an attempt to be understood. Most people would have brushed him off, impatiently waving him aside. And maybe she almost did. But instead, she did something no one expected. She lifted her hands and signed back. Just one word. A simple greeting. But the moment she did, the room changed. The man's eyes lit up, a mixture of shock and relief. For him, it was not just communication, it was dignity. For her, it was instinct, a choice made in seconds. What she didn't know was that someone else was watching. Not a colleague, not another intern, but the very man whose name was carved into the building's polished glass doors. The CEO. Silent. Observant. Smiling. But why was he watching? And how could this small, shy act, barely noticed by the people around her, become the spark of something much bigger? This was not just a greeting. It was the beginning of a story no one in that office would forget. Amara was not the kind of intern people noticed. At 21, fresh out of college, she carried herself with the kind of caution that made her blend into the background. Her frame was small, her voice soft, and her manner always polite, too polite, some would whisper. In a place where confidence roared through marble corridors and glass elevators, Amara walked quietly, clutching a notebook, reminding herself each day to just get through it. The office tower itself seemed designed to intimidate. 40 stories of glass and steel that caught the morning sun like a mirror, reflecting a city that never slowed down. Inside, the lobby was all sharp edges and gleaming surfaces. Marble floors so polished they seemed to swallow reflections, chrome accents that stretched toward the sky, and chandeliers that shimmered like falling stars. It was the kind of place that made people feel small, or important, depending on which side of the counter they stood. Amara stood behind the counter. Always behind. Her role was temporary assistant, a polite way of saying she did the jobs no one else wanted. Answering phones, stamping visitor badges, sorting mail, even refilling the candy bowl that executives dipped their hands into without a glance. She smiled when they passed, nodded when spoken to, and stayed silent when conversations floated above her head like balloons she wasn't allowed to touch. It wasn't that she lacked ambition. Amara wanted more, desperately. But she had been raised to stay careful, to avoid trouble, to not draw attention. Her parents had told her the same lesson over and over. You'll have to work twice as hard, be twice as careful, and never give anyone a reason to doubt you. That weight sat heavy on her shoulders each day as she watched bold interns network their way into meetings while she quietly managed the reception desk. Still, Amara had something most people didn't know. A secret skill, tucked away, rarely used. In college, she had spent her evenings volunteering at a community center where she learned American Sign Language. It had started as curiosity, but it quickly became something she loved. The fluidity of the movements, the beauty of silent conversation. To her, it wasn't just language. It was connection. But in this office, that skill felt useless. After all, who would she ever need to sign to in a place filled with million-dollar deals and polished executives? That morning began like any other. She arrived early, as she always did, slipping through the staff entrance while the city was still waking up. She set her notebook on the counter, checked the visitor log, and adjusted the vase of flowers that always leaned slightly to one side. She liked order. Predictability. No surprises. And for the first hour, that's exactly what she got. Executives strode past without noticing her. Delivery workers dropped off packages and left. The hum of printers and footsteps filled the space, steady as a heartbeat. But then, the glass doors opened. He walked in quietly, wearing a red and white delivery jacket, a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. His hands gripped a clipboard, but his movements were hesitant, uncertain. Amara lifted her head, offering the polite smile she always did. But when he stepped forward, he didn't speak. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Instead, his hands shifted in small, clumsy motions, gestures that most people would dismiss. For a moment, Amara froze. She knew those movements. Her instinct told her to respond. Her training told her to stay professional, keep it simple. But something deeper urged her forward. Slowly, she raised her hand and signed one word: hello. The man's eyes widened. Relief spread across his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. In that moment, Amara wasn't invisible. She wasn't just the intern. She was the only person in that entire towering building who could see him, hear him, understand him. And yet, what she didn't realize was that someone else had been watching. Standing just a few steps back in the lobby, his presence hidden by the glass pillars, was the CEO himself. The man who rarely appeared in the lobby. The man everyone feared or admired. His sharp suit was as polished as the marble beneath his shoes, and his eyes lingered not on the guest, but on Amara. Silent, observant, waiting. And with that, the ordinary morning was no longer ordinary. Something had shifted. Something was about to change. At first, it was just a simple exchange. Amara signed a polite greeting, her fingers moving with shy precision. The visitor's face brightened as if someone had finally opened a door he had been knocking on all morning. He responded quickly, his hands moving more fluidly now, explaining that he was there to make a scheduled delivery. For Amara, the moment felt private, almost sacred. Here, in a place where she was often overlooked, she was suddenly useful in a way no one else could be. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about dignity, his, and maybe her own. But the office lobby was never truly private. The sharp click of heels against marble interrupted the quiet. It was Marissa, the senior receptionist. Blonde, confident, and always carrying herself as though the entire building belonged to her. She stopped mid-stride, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight of Amara signing to the man in the red jacket. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to slice the moment in half. Amara lowered her hands, instinctively flinching. She explained softly, "He's deaf. He needs help with the delivery paperwork." Marissa's eyebrow arched. "And since when are you handling deliveries? Just get him to sign and move him along. We are not running a charity here." Her words weren't loud, but they carried, echoing in the marble lobby. The delivery man's face stiffened. He might not have heard her tone, but he read her expression perfectly. His shoulders slumped. Amara's chest tightened. She glanced at him, then back at Marissa. Her fingers trembled for a second before she dared to lift them again, signing slowly, "It's okay. I'll help." That was when she felt it, the weight of stares. Two junior interns, balancing coffee trays, had stopped to watch. A security guard near the entrance shifted uncomfortably, trying to look away but clearly listening. Even a pair of executives, waiting for the elevator, exchanged smirks. Amara's cheeks burned. She wasn't supposed to stand out. She wasn't supposed to be the center of anything. But now, all eyes seemed fixed on her, some curious, some judgmental, and some dismissive, as if she had overstepped a boundary simply by caring. Still, she pressed on. She guided the man toward the counter, gently pointing at the forms. She signed instructions. "Write your name. Here. Date. Here." His gratitude showed in his smile, small but genuine. But Marissa wasn't finished. She leaned across the counter, lowering her voice just enough to make the words sting. "This isn't your job, Amara. Don't make yourself look desperate." It was the word desperate that lodged itself deep inside Amara's chest. Desperate. For attention? Desperate. To prove her worth? She wanted to say no, to push back, but the years of swallowing words kept her silent. Instead, she focused on the man, signing again with deliberate calm. And that was when the shift happened. The delivery man fumbled with his pen. His hand shook, not from inability, but from the countless times he had been treated as invisible. The pen scratched across the paper awkwardly. A laugh slipped from one of the interns carrying coffee. Quiet, but cruel enough. Amara's instinct flared. She leaned closer, placing her own hand gently on the paper, steadying it. She smiled at him, Not the practiced polite smile she used with executives, but something warmer. A reassurance. He steadied. He signed one word back, thanks. And somewhere behind them, unnoticed by all but fate, the CEO's lips curled into the faintest smile. He stood farther back now, partially shadowed by one of the marble pillars. He hadn't moved forward, hadn't revealed himself. He simply watched, his sharp eyes scanning every flicker of the scene, the kindness, the cruelty, the tension humming like an invisible string ready to snap. The lobby grew heavier with unspoken judgment. Marissa folded her arms, radiating disapproval. The interns whispered. Even the executives waiting by the elevator looked impatient, as though the delay was an inconvenience to them personally. Yet Amara kept going. Her hands moved with care, her posture steady despite the knot in her stomach. And with every gesture, every silent word she offered, the delivery man straightened a little more, reclaiming a dignity that the world so often denied him. What Amara didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this quiet defiance, this small act of empathy, was being weighed heavily by the one man whose opinion could alter her entire future. The CEO wasn't just watching. He was judging. And soon, his silence would end. The pen scratched across the page again, uneven, struggling to catch the printed lines of the form. The delivery worker's brow furrowed with concentration, his hand trembling under the weight of every eye in the lobby. It wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was a stage. Every movement judged, every hesitation magnified. Amara stayed close, her hands steadying the form, her eyes offering silent encouragement. She could feel the hostility around her like static in the air, but she refused to pull away. Then came the sound that shattered her resolve. A laugh. Louder this time, unrestrained. One of the interns at the elevator snickered to his friend, whispering something they thought was clever but cruel. The other chuckled too, shaking his head as though the sight of a deaf man struggling with a simple form was a spectacle. Marissa didn't stop them. If anything, her lips curved into the faintest smirk. And then, she spoke, her words sharp, slicing through the fragile bubble Amara had built. This is ridiculous. He can't even fill out a basic form without help. Amara, do you realize you're wasting everyone's time? Some people simply don't belong here. The words landed heavy. For a moment, even the hum of the air vents seemed to pause. Amara's stomach twisted. She felt heat rise in her chest, shame colliding with anger. The man's pen froze. He didn't need to hear the words to understand. His shoulders hunched, his lips pressing tight. He began to withdraw his hand, ready to abandon the form altogether. No, Amara whispered under her breath, almost pleading. She caught his hand gently, urging him back toward the paper. Her own hand trembled as she signed slowly, carefully. You're doing fine. Don't stop. The man looked at her, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. Grief, perhaps, or the exhaustion of years being told he was less. Then, with visible effort, he pressed the pen back down, signing his name one letter at a time. But the laughter had poisoned the air. Another snicker, another muttered remark. Someone sighed impatiently near the elevator. Even the security guard shifted, as though unsure whether to intervene or simply look away. And then Marissa leaned closer, her voice low but venomous enough for Amara alone to hear. Do you really think this makes you look good? Playing the hero for someone like him? It just makes you look desperate. Pitiful. That word again, pitiful. It hit Amara harder than she expected, dragging up every insecurity she had tried to bury. She had spent weeks keeping her head down, working twice as hard as others just to prove she belonged in this office. And now, here she was, mocked for showing compassion, judged for daring to care. Her throat tightened, tears threatening. But then her gaze caught the delivery man's hand, shaking, but still writing. One final stroke of the pen, shaky but complete. He had done it. Against the weight of humiliation, he had finished. And in that instant, something shifted in Amara. Her shame gave way to resolve. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and let her hands speak louder than her voice ever could. She signed deliberately, each movement bold and unflinching. Well done. You matter. The delivery man's eyes glistened. He nodded, holding her gaze. The lobby, however, had grown heavier. Whispers rippled. Marissa's smirk deepened, certain she had made Amara look weak. The interns exchanged glances, their laughter barely contained. And then, silence. A presence filled the space, commanding without a word. Slowly, Heads began to turn. The whispers died, the laughter choked off mid-breath. Marissa's smirk faltered. Because he had stepped forward. The CEO. He had been there the whole time, watching from the shadows of the marble pillars. Now, with measured steps, he moved into the light, his sharp navy suit catching the golden glow of the lobby. His face was calm, almost unreadable, but his eyes burned with clarity. Every head in the lobby lowered slightly, a mix of respect and fear. Even Marissa's spine stiffened, her confidence faltering under the sudden weight of authority. Amara froze, her heart hammering. She hadn't known. She hadn't realized he was there. All the humiliation, the tension, the defiance, it had all unfolded under his gaze. The delivery man looked between them, uncertain but hopeful. The CEO stopped just a few steps away, his eyes lingering on Amara, then shifting briefly to the delivery worker. His silence carried more weight than any rebuke Marissa had ever delivered. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his verdict. Amara's fingers curled against the counter. She had tried to be invisible, but now she was anything but. And whatever happened next, whether judgment, dismissal, or something entirely unexpected, would change everything. The climax had arrived. The marble lobby seemed to freeze in time. Every whisper, every shuffle of shoes, every shallow breath hung suspended, waiting for the man who now stood at the center of it all. The CEO's presence radiated a quiet gravity. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't rush forward, but somehow, his very stillness commanded more power than the cruelty that had filled the space moments earlier. His eyes lingered on the delivery worker, who stood clutching the clipboard, shoulders hunched as though bracing for yet another blow from a world that had given him too many. Then his gaze shifted, settling on Amara. She could feel it burn through her. Her pulse thundered in her ears, her throat dry, her hands trembling against the edge of the counter. She had tried to help. She had tried to shield dignity where others had stripped it away. But had she overstepped? Had she embarrassed the company? Would she be the one to pay? The CEO finally spoke. His voice was calm, deep, deliberate, carrying across the lobby without force, yet demanding every ear. I've seen enough. The words landed like a gavel. The interns near the elevator stiffened. The security guard's eyes widened. Even Marissa froze, her smirk draining into nervous stillness. He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble. Stopping beside the delivery worker, he extended his hand, not for the clipboard, but to shake his. The man hesitated, eyes widening, unsure if he had understood. The CEO's expression softened slightly. And then, with deliberate precision, he raised his free hand. Slowly, awkwardly, he signed. Thank you. The delivery worker's lips parted, his body trembling with disbelief. His eyes glistened as he grasped the CEO's hand firmly. That simple act, so ordinary, yet so rare, spoke louder than any words the crowd had offered all day. The lobby exhaled. Amara's breath caught in her chest. She hadn't known. The CEO, he could sign? The man in the sharp navy suit released the worker's hand, then gestured toward Amara. His words this time were directed to the entire room. Compassion is not weakness. Dignity is not optional. And today, the only person who showed true leadership was not the one with a title. Silence blanketed the lobby. No one moved. Every eye turned to Amara. Her cheeks flushed hot, her throat tightening. She wanted to shrink into the counter, to disappear, but the CEO's gaze anchored her in place. Miss Amara, he continued, his voice firm yet warm, what you did here is the very heart of this company. You didn't see a label. You didn't see an inconvenience. You saw a person. And you reminded us what too many forget, that humanity is the foundation of everything we build. The words reverberated, sinking deep. Amara blinked, her vision blurring with tears she hadn't given permission to fall. She had not expected recognition. She had not expected kindness. Yet here it was, pouring over her like sunlight through the lobby's tall glass walls. Behind her, Marissa shifted, her composure cracking. For the first time, her authority seemed brittle, hollow. The CEO turned his head slightly, his tone cooling. And as for the mockery I witnessed, let me be perfectly clear. This company will not tolerate cruelty, condescension, or exclusion. Not from leaders, not from peers, not from anyone. Titles are meaningless without integrity. If you cannot understand that, you have no place here. Marissa's lips parted as though to protest, but no words came. Her shoulders sank. The smirk that had defined her presence all morning had vanished, replaced with the pale stillness of someone suddenly stripped of power. The CEO looked back at the delivery worker. "Sir, we are honored you came here today. Your time matters. Your presence matters. And you will always be welcome here." The man's chest rose, his trembling steadied. He nodded, his eyes shining. He raised his hands and signed back, haltingly but with force. "Thank you, respect." And for the first time that day, he stood taller. Amara swallowed hard, her own chest tight with the weight of what had unfolded. She glanced at him, their eyes meeting. Two strangers bound for a fleeting moment by dignity reclaimed, by kindness defended. The CEO turned back to Amara one final time. His eyes softened, his tone lowering so only she could hear. "Never doubt that doing the right thing matters. Even when no one seems to notice, someone always does." Her breath caught. A shiver rippled through her, not of fear this time, but of realization. She had spent weeks doubting herself, shrinking back, convinced her silence would keep her safe. But in that moment, she understood. Silence in the face of cruelty was not safety. It was surrender. And she would not surrender again. The delivery worker left with his head held higher than when he had entered. The lobby slowly returned to its rhythm, but the air was different, charged, heavier with awareness. The interns avoided Amara's eyes, shame clouding their faces. Even Marissa's footsteps as she retreated to her office felt quieter, stripped of authority. And Amara. She stood taller than she had since the day she first walked into that glass building. Later, when she returned to her desk, she caught her reflection in the darkened screen of her computer. Her uniform was still neat, her posture still composed, but there was something new in her gaze. A quiet strength. Because she knew now, she had been seen. Not just by the CEO. Not just by the man she had helped. But by herself. Her story was no longer about hiding, about surviving unnoticed. It was about stepping into the light, even when others tried to dim it. And as the day drew on, one question echoed in the hearts of everyone who had stood in that lobby, watching it all unfold. If compassion can change a single moment so completely, what might it change if we chose it every single day?